jobs!
Fury spilling over at a spontaneous protest today in Dover. These just a handful of the hundreds now out of a job. Phil's decades of work on P&O Ferries brought to an abrupt close just after 11 a.m. without warning on a video call.
Over 34 years, yeah.
And what was going through your head this morning when you heard the news, when they told you?
To start with, I was a bit numb. I thought it was just I just thought this is a bad dream. Can't believe this is happening.
This was the way in which 800 people were told they wouldn't set foot on the ships again.
The company has made the decision that its vessels going forward will be primarily crewed by a third-party crew provider. Therefore, I am sorry to inform you that this means your employment is terminated with immediate effect on the grounds of redundancy.
Replaced instead with cheap agency workers bussed in this morning and now already on board, in some cases crossing paths with those whose jobs they were replacing. This video sent to us by a crew member as he was leaving. P&O blamed the move on financial difficulties, saying it wasn't a viable business, that it had made £100 million losses year on year, and that without these changes there would be no future. The RMT union blocked a junction in Dover today to protest those changes, describing them as one of the most shameful acts in the history of British industrial relations.
Support local jobs!
It told crew members to stay on board in protest, but they were escorted off shortly after. How far are you prepared to go?
All the way.
What does that mean? What does that look like?
Whatever it takes, okay, to ensure that, you know, UK seafarers is at the heart of the UK maritime industry.
Will you be blocking ports, for example?
Blocking ports, we'll be doing anything in our power, legally or otherwise.
Sean, who works on one of the ship's kitchens, spent today absorbing the news.
And I got a text from my mum, because she was on her way over to Deal, and she basically said, all the ships are basically up against the wall, do you know what's going on? And that was the first I knew about it.
Could you have ever expected that this would be the way that it ended, really?
No, nothing on this scale. Not to basically say to the entire workforce, see you later.
P&O turned its passengers away today and said these ferries, with their new crews, would be staying at port for the next few days. Well, it's pretty quiet here for now. Those boats you might be able to see behind me will be staying put at least for the next few days. But it doesn't look like the RMT is going to go quietly. Now, employment lawyers I've spoken to today have said the move by P&O is pretty unusual. We're talking about no warning, no consultation, and it seems Number 10 were also caught off guard by this. They say they were given no advance warning of it. They've had to scramble a team together to work out exactly what's going on. And the PM spokesperson was critical of what he called the practice of firing and rehiring, and said that he hoped on the route that they were going to go down, although it seems a little bit late for that actually, and that this is, if you will, a process of firing an immediate replacement, or at least it appears so from what we've seen and heard today. And in fact, MPs across the board have been united in their criticism of P&O.
Amelia, thanks very much. Well, Jane Dodge is in Hull for us, where more P&O staff were told that they had been sacked. Jane.
Well, the lights may be still on the ferry behind me, the pride of Hull, but it's going nowhere. Crew on board this morning were so angry at today's announcement that they actually refused to leave the vessel. There were staff, replacement staff, sitting waiting in a coach nearby, but the actual captain on board refused to allow anyone to come on board until he said P&O issued more clarification of redundancy terms. A union official who was on board at the time said staff were distraught. Were people really upset?
Yeah, you know, there was people there was grown men crying on there. There was upset because people have got families and they need to know what they're going to do next. And redundancy is okay, the money's okay, but it'll soon run out. People want a reliable job, and not one member of staff that have come off that ship wanted to leave.
Well, the sit-in actually lasted for more than 5 hours. Eventually, staff did come off voluntarily. Some of them, though, will be back here tomorrow for a demonstration organised by the RMT union. Other similar protests will be held in Dover and Liverpool.
Jane, thanks very much. Well, the Conservative MP Hugh Merriman chairs the Transport Select Committee. I spoke to him earlier and began by asking what he made of today's announcement by P&O.
I'm absolutely staggered. I mean, I look back on sort of corporate failures in terms of PR and the way you treat your employees, and this one has to come right at the very top. It's come out of nowhere. I'm not entirely sure it can be legally valid. It's quite complicated, but I just do not see how you can inform that you are managing to waive someone's consultation period when they haven't even agreed to it. That just can't be valid under English employment law. The whole thing is just an absolute bombshell and a disaster for P&O Ferries. I can't see any way back for them if they don't reverse.
I mean, you've got 800 crew members literally sacked on the spot. Your final day of employment is today, escorted off their ships by private security officers. I mean, how can this be possible?
Well, I don't actually believe that it can be possible. I mean, at the moment, the lawyers are looking at the contract. I believe the RMT, the union, is seeking an injunction. There are ways to avoid a consultation exercise, but that's only when an entity is a catastrophic failure.
You see, this can't be left to just being a PR disaster, can it? I mean, what can the government do about it? The company have made quite clear that these people are to be replaced by cheaper foreign labour. Do you think this should change the government's mind on fire and rehire?
Well, I don't think this is fire and rehire. This looks to be fire with no rehiring at all. I've just been in the House of Commons chamber and I've said the government needs to act. If it hasn't got the powers already, we need to bring emergency legislation to do so. But that's more to stop these people being terminated. I don't even believe they're being offered the opportunity to get a job back, even on reduced terms. And I don't believe that's legally valid. So we have to first assess if the powers already exist. And the High Court would determine that. But yeah, you're quite right. If they don't exist, I'd like emergency legislation so they do.
I mean, that does mean the government interfering in a private company, doesn't it?
Well, it does, but we have to send a message that this is just not acceptable. I mean, you're right, I've mentioned it's bad PR, bad commercially, but it also needs to be bad legally and can't be done.
P&O claimed almost £15 million in government grants, including furlough in 2020. DP World, you've talked about them, the Dubai-based company which owns it, paid a £270 million dividend to shareholders that year, now is sacking workers by Zoom. Do you feel had by P&O?
Absolutely, and this was an issue I had a couple of years back when British Airways tried to do, they were doing fire and rehire, and frustratingly they were claiming furlough whilst they had the workers on redundancy consultation, and that was wrong at the time as well. So yeah, we will feel absolutely had if this is the case, but let me tell you this, we will not give in on behalf of those workers. If they've not got the legal rights that they deserve, then I will be doing everything I can to make sure that they get their jobs back, and if P&O don't do this on a commercial basis, I think they're finished as a company. The British public won't accept this.
But it's disastrous for individual workers, but it's disastrous for some regions, particularly, say, Northern Ireland.
Well, it is, but also I represent a constituency on the Kent border, and that's going to have a massive impact there. And that's why these issues are more than just commercial. That's why the government is right to give a statement and make it quite clear they're going to do everything they can to stop this. I think the government is on board. The question is, what powers do we have? We've got to use them. What powers do we actually need? If we are lacking, we need to put them in place.
Hugh Merriman, thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thank you.
Well, let's talk now to the Hull Labour MP, Carl Turner. Mr Turner, your reaction first of all.
Well, look, the actions of P&O Ferries today is absolutely despicable. I spoke with the Secretary of State earlier today, Grant Shapps. I'm sure he won't mind me telling you that he was incredibly angry as well. This has come as a shock across the board. That vessel behind me was christened the Pride of Hull. She used to be the Pride of Hull. She's not now. P&O Ferries need to rethink this decision, get around the table with the trade unions and negotiate a better arrangement than sacking 800 men and women seafarers, British seafarers, who deserve a lot better. 2 weeks from now marks the 40th anniversary of the Falklands War. The predecessor to that vessel was the MV No Land. She sailed to the Falklands and was involved in conflict. In those days, North Sea Ferries, the predecessor to P&O, were proud of British seafarers. They're not anymore. They've treated them with complete and utter contempt.
P&O say that they have no choice. They have lost 100 million in the last year. This was the only option for them.
Well, look, the first thing I would say is they've had, I think, 15 million quid from the British taxpayer as a result of the pandemic. They've had the support that they were asking for and indeed needed. Most businesses have suffered as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, but passenger numbers are up. The reality is the profits of this business are made through freight, not through passenger numbers. And in any event, passenger numbers are increasing day on day. The really busy season is about to start now. I don't believe P&O Ferries. In my experience of dealing with them over the years, they've always treated the workers pretty badly, but this move today is utterly despicable and contemptible, and they need to rethink it.
You said obviously you've spoken to government and that government are really furious, and they've made that quite clear in the House today, and there's been condemnation across the political spectrum. The critical question, though, is what can be done?
Well, what they can do is tell this company, P&O Ferries, to get round the table with the trade unions. That's the very least Grant Shapps should be saying to P&O Ferries, and I expect he is doing that.
But can they
so let's
save
see
the
what
jobs,
comes in
though?
the next few days. Well, look, I think the jobs, I think the jobs can be saved. I don't think there's a real lot of difference by employing agency workers on a few quid an hour less. I think it's just an excuse for P&O Ferries to make more profit, frankly, and it's not good enough. We're not going to put up with it. There's a protest here tomorrow at 12 noon. I'm inviting every person to come along, show P&O Ferries that they're absolutely disgusted with the decision they've made today, and, you know, show solidarity to those men and women who are tonight facing the prospect of unemployment tomorrow. They deserve better. They worked through the pandemic, carrying freight from the continent into this country, and this company have treated them dreadfully.
Very, very briefly, obviously it's disastrous and shocking for individuals and their families, but what will this mean for an area like yours?
Look, I mean, this is devastating. The seafaring industry in my part of the world has declined over a number of years, in recent years particularly badly. We need these jobs in Hull. Kids at schools in my constituency deserve the right to have a seafaring career. They always did. There were good jobs at sea. People start as a sort of trainee on board those vessels and very often ended up as the seafaring captains. Those kids at schools in my constituency deserve that opportunity, and this business needs to think again.
Carl Turner, thanks very much for talking to us today. Thank you.